So, welcome everybody again to the live webinar on the results of the 22nd edition of the report on the state of renewable energies in Europe. My name is Uta Zeringer. I'm head of department academic programs at Renewables Academy here in Berlin, and I will be moderating today. Our agenda for the live webinar is according or follows the chapters of the EurObserv'ER's annual report, and you will get the key results from the following chapters. We start with energy indicators. There will be a short overview about the focus chapter on renewable energy sources, heating and cooling in buildings. Furthermore, focus on investment indicators, then socio-economic impacts, renewable energy sources, costs, prices, and cost competitiveness, avoided fossil fuel use and avoided greenhouse gas emissions, and innovation and competitiveness indicators. So all of the team members from this EurObserv'ER project did a great job in researching, collecting, and calculate the indicators and preparing the report. And this webinar today is a highlight for us. It's a highlight of every year, I would say, because we can talk about the findings. With us today are Diane Lescaut from Observer. She's the team leader in this EurObserv'ER project, and she will provide you a brief project overview. With us today is also Frédéric Thuillier from Observer. He will talk about the energy indicators. Furthermore, Julia Pani from Fraunhofer ICI, as well as Lin Sheng from Fraunhofer ICI. She will present the investment indicators. Floris Uhlemann from TNO Energy Transition will talk about costs of renewable energy use, prices, and cost competitiveness. He also will present the part avoided fossil fuel use and avoided greenhouse gas emissions, elaborated by our colleagues from VITO. And at the end, he will present innovation and competitiveness indicators. I would like to hand over now to Diane. She will give a general review of the EurObserv'ER project, which started in 1999. Diane, the floor is yours.
Hello to everyone. I'm Diane Lescaut, Director of Observer, and I am coordinating the project with Frédéric Thuillier and all our partners. It looks like I do not have, yes, I do have it.
Thank you.
I have the control now. Thank you very much. My task and pleasure this morning in the webinar is to introduce you briefly to the EurObserv'ER project. For those who know us, please excuse the repetition. It's a bit slow. The EurObserv'ER project has been initiated by Observer in 1999 with the support of the European Commission and ADEME, the French Energy Agency. They have maintained support until then, so the consortium is very grateful to the two organizations. The project team here is committed to give you a complete monitoring of the renewable energy technology deployments in the European Union. We have produced so far 159 thematic barometers and 22 overview barometers. Thematic barometers are documents, as you may know, which focus on one particular technology, and it gives the estimates on all installed capacities or market sales according to the technology under review. And also it gives estimations of the energy production, with explanations on the political support policies, that are in place in the different countries, and the main events that happened in the main member states. We are collecting our data thanks to our networks of contacts throughout Europe, and they are meant to give a sense of the trends that are at work in the sector and the review before Eurostat release their own data. So far this year, we have published the overview barometer and the wind power barometer. We are now working on the photovoltaic one, which is scheduled to be released in the coming week. And next will be solar thermal and concentrated solar power in July, RES in transport in September, heat pumps in October, November, and solid biofuels in December. The current webinar is about the results of our 22nd edition of our annual report, which has been released end of February this year. It is based on data collected in 2023. As you may see from, yes, oops, sorry, went back. As you may see from the list of the report contents, the aim of this publication is to provide in one document an exhaustive overview of the deployment and positive impacts of this deployment in the EU. My colleagues will take you through the main results in 1 minute. Yes. You can freely, as Uta has already mentioned, you can freely download the whole report from the website in English and in French, which is produced, the French version is produced with the support of ADEME. And for those who do not have the courage to go through the 346 pages of the report, we have produced a summary brochure, which is now also available. One last slide on our website, which regroups all the documents and deliverables we produce in this project. We have a press corner here, which regroups all press releases and PDFs of graphs that can be used by those who talk about the barometer or the sector. We have here case studies on innovative financing schemes that are produced every fall. And here we have access to all the barometers in French, in English and French. And very important, the interactive database is updated after all publication to include the up-to-date data that we have produced. You can create your own Excel table from there. Follow us on Twitter, and you can adhere to the contact list. Thank you. I will now give the floor to Frédéric, who will take you through the energy indicators for this year.
Thank you, Diane, for the overview. And yes, we start now with the energy indicators relating to installed capacity or energy generated are among the most used to monitor the progress of renewable energy. And the new edition of the EurObserv'ER Global Barometer includes an entire chapter to this topic. I like indicators, and I'm very curious to listen to Frédéric Thuillier from Observer, who is ready to talk about them.
Thank you, Uta. So, hello everybody. So, in terms of energy indicators, Right. Okay. In terms of energy indicators, so the new edition of the annual report presents a detailed picture of the year 2022. So it's figures about each European Union member state and for each of the 12 commercially developed renewable technologies. So 22 was a quite special year because the year began in the context of the European Commission Green Deal, which aims to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. But that year was hit by the war in Ukraine, which led the European Union into a serious energy and economic crisis. So due to that, the stakes were raised and leading to an acceleration of the EU's energy transition. This has been reflected in one Green Deal industrial plan, which aims to boost the competitiveness of Europe's zero emissions industry, and also by a new RED III directive, which aims to achieve a minimum of 42.5% share of renewable energy in the gross final energy consumption by the end of 2030. So the review of the year 2022 presents the momentum of renewable energies in the European Union ahead of a new acceleration trend, a new acceleration dynamic. So the first indicators is about electricity generation. For electricity generation, the level of production remained quite stable across Europe between 21 and 22. But in terms of individual sectors, there was, in fact, some differences because there was a quite spectacular fall in almost 21% in hydroelectric production during that year. This dry spell of 22 was exceptional, as such a level had not been seen since the 60s, in fact. So, but this fall was offset by a very good production from wind energy and mostly by photovoltaic plants, which increased by 28% during that years. So this phenomenon illustrates the complementary nature of the various renewable technologies. It means one technology can take over from another one depending on the climatic conditions throughout the year. So in 22, renewable energies accounted for 41.2% of total gross electricity production in the European Union. This was more than in 21, when the share was measured at 37.1%. And when we take a look at the countries, we see that 3 countries are reached more than 70% threshold: Austria, Denmark, and the first one is Sweden, which is the only country with more than 80% of renewable energy in the electricity production. The next slide is about heat and cooling consumption. So over the long term, the growth of renewable energy technologies in the consumption of heating and cooling is a very strong trend, because the 110 megaton oil equivalent mark was passed in 21. But it's true that in 22, this figure slightly went down, and it was mainly due to the fact that in that year, in 22, it was a very hot year with a shorter than usual heating season, which in fact, the results on the heating and cooling results. The growth in consumption of renewable energy for dynamic heat and cooling needs to be in fact explained in particular by greater account being taken of solid biomass recovery, the integration also of cooling from renewable energy, which is integrating in the country statistics, and above all, a very strong growth in the use of heat pumps. So in 22, renewable sources accounted for 24.8% of the total energy consumption for heating and cooling, and it was 1.8 percentage more than in 21. And concerning countries' status, not surprisingly, the renewable share in these indicators is higher in the forest countries, especially those located in the northern part of Europe. So if we take a look at the global picture, 6 member states are above 50% threshold, and 3 are above 60% share. And at the opposite, just 2 countries are under a 10% share. And now, sorry, yes, yeah, now about the last indicators on gross final energy consumption, which is one of the most identified indicators regarding the development of renewable energies on the energy balance. So in 22, the European Union will have achieved a 23% share of its gross final energy consumption from renewable sources. So it means around 1.1 percentage point higher than in 21. Now with the RED III European directive, the new target for 2030 has been raised from 32% to 42.5%. So as a result, European countries must step up their efforts, which requires increasing in the share of renewable energy sources in gross final energy consumption by almost 20 percentage points. So it's quite huge because it has taken 18 years to increase the share from around 10% in 2004 to 23% in 22. It means an increase of about 30 or 14 percentage points. And now we have just 8 years to reach the threshold of 42.5%. It means an increase of nearly 20 percentage points. So it's a real big challenge, quite a difficult one, but not impossible because some countries have already reached this share. For example, Sweden or Finland or Latvia are, for example, in Sweden, 66% of the gross final energy consumption are coming from renewable energy sources. So that's all for my part. And now I give the floor to Lynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is crucial to see, to know, because it's not only about numbers, it's also about to talk about later on and to compare and to know how we can reach our targets. Now we would like to go over to the chapter focused on renewable energy sources in buildings. Only 23% of heating and cooling energy derived from renewable energy sources. Also, self-consumption of solar PV is still below its technical potential. This means there are substantial opportunities for increasing use of renewable energy sources in buildings across Europe. Julia Pani from Fraunhofer ICI will talk about related indicators and the chapter's focus on renewable energy sources in buildings. Julia, please.
Thank you very much. And yeah, also hello from my side. So as already said, my name is Julia Pani, and I'm a researcher at the Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research. And in the next couple of minutes, I will present, as already said, selected indicators related to renewable energy sources in buildings. Here on this slide, you can see all the indicators that we calculated on this topic, out of which I will present only 4. So 2 indicators for renewable heating and cooling in buildings and urban infrastructure, which I will present on behalf of my colleague Anna Billerbeck, and 2 indicators for renewable electricity in buildings. So moving to the first indicator, this is the consumption share of renewable energy sources in heating and cooling in residential buildings and services derived from final energy demand data from Eurostat. Here in this figure, you can see the European member states being ranked by share of renewable energy sources and waste heat consumed in residential buildings and services. You can see the, let's say, well-performing member states on the right-hand side of the graph, so mostly Scandinavian and Baltic countries. However, what you can really also see from this graph is that fossil fuels, which are depicted in the gray shades, still play quite an important role, especially natural gas. But what we can also see is that also coal is still playing quite a significant role in some countries, such as Poland, but also some other Eastern European countries. Then moving on, oh, that was one too much, sorry. Moving on to the next indicator, this is the share of renewable energy sources in district heating. So this basically depicts the type of energy carrier that is used in district heating networks in different European member states. And yeah, again, what we can see is quite a reliance still on fossil fuels in many countries, especially if you look closely in Eastern and Central European countries, and in Scandinavian and Baltic countries, we see considerably higher shares of biomass. Yeah, and large-scale heat pumps, for example, and industrial waste heat, which you can see in indicated in the purple color, are still yeah, less common. So in summary for this topic, heating and cooling, we can see that fossil fuels are still quite dominant. However, what we can also see is that some countries do show high dynamics with regard to the consumption and sales of renewable energy sources in heating and cooling. Overall, the share of coal and oil boilers is going down. However, this is taking place only slowly. Yeah, what we can see is that fossil fuel boilers still remain the most commonly used heating technology at present, followed closely by district heating. So conclusion is that overall we see some improvements in this particular sector of heating and cooling. However, there still remains considerable work to be done over the next couple of years to be able to reach the overall energy and climate targets. So we now move on to renewable electricity in buildings, focusing primarily on the topic of self-consumption of solar photovoltaics. So first I will talk a little bit about what we can see empirically. Here we did collect data from several member states. In this first figure, you can see the actual self-consumption shares of some bigger EU member states in 2021 and 2022. So this is Italy, France, Germany, and Spain. And what we can see here is that yeah, Italy is reaching the highest share of self-consumption in total PV electricity production, namely 23%, followed by Germany with 9%, and Spain and France with considerably lower shares, around or even below 5%. Then on the next slide, we basically have the same graph, but depicting the situation in some smaller member states. Here, the highest self-consumption shares are reached, or the highest share is reached by Sweden with 44%, followed by Austria and Malta, which also reach considerable shares of self-consumption. And we can see quite low or very low self-consumption shares, around only 1% in Luxembourg, for example. In general, what can be said for the empirical picture is that self-consumption shares have either stayed the same or slightly increased, but there is still quite some growth potential here to be reaped by the different member states. This slide now shows the economic self-consumption potential. We calculated this for 17 selected EU member states. And here what we can see indicated by the green color is that in most countries, self-consumption is actually the economically most rational choice, because that is where the highest revenues would occur. Only in Malta and France, indicated in the blue shade, our results indicate that injection into the grid instead of self-consumption is currently the more profitable decision, and that can be explained due to the still relatively high feed-in remuneration in these two countries that currently make injection of the self-produced electricity into the grid more attractive than consuming it, than self-consuming it. Then already moving on to the next slide and conclusion for my topic. So in summary, we can see that self-consumption has been a growing phenomenon in recent years, and it also looks like this trend will continue. Economically speaking, self-consumption is the dominant choice in most of the member states. Also from a technical perspective, what we can see is that there is still quite some room for self-consumption of renewable electricity in buildings. So the existing potential is not yet fully exploited. So there is quite some potential for growth in the years to come. And with that, I conclude my part and hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Julia. We would like to come now to the chapter Investment Indicators. Well, the economic advantages of PV-based electricity are also reflected through the increasing investments of 33 billion euro in 2021, while investment in wind power plants set back between 2021 and 2022, and Lin Cheng from Fraunhofer ICI will focus in her presentation on more investment indicators. Please, Lin.
Thank you for the introduction. Just a minute now. My name is Lin Zheng from Fraunhofer ISI. I'm also a researcher there, as my colleague Julia Pani, who just introduced the renewables in the building sectors. And indeed, unlike the consistent dynamic observed in renewables in buildings, investments in newly built renewable capacity shows a more diverse picture between PV and wind technologies. Zooming into the investment activities in the wind sector, we see a drop by 48% in the investment volume from 2021, decreased to around 15 billion euros in 2022. Correspondingly, the associated capacity added decreased also by 42% to 11 gigawatt in 2022. In particular, offshore wind projects lack investments, and only France made investment associating to 70 megawatt of offshore wind capacities. Other member states invested solely into onshore wind projects, and most of which with a smaller investment volume than what they did in 2021. In contrary, the solar PV sector continues to show increasing investment over the years and reached a capacity added of 27 gigawatts and an investment volume of 33 billion euro in 2021, doubling the investment in 2020. And on average, almost half of the investment in 2021 were made in plants with a capacity between 20 kilowatt and 1 megawatt. However, the distribution in member states differs from one to another. For the year 2022, we have only a limited set of information for 11 member states by the time we conducted the analysis. Nevertheless, the investment volume and associated capacity added from these member states have already exceeded the numbers what they have achieved in 2021. So we can say that we expect more investments in 2022 overall for the PV sectors. The investment costs for PV have been slowly recovered from the special economic circumstances caused by the pandemic and dropped slightly in 2022. And with that, I conclude my part and hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Lynn. We will see next year how the numbers, indicators will have developed. And dear participants, as you probably know, as the share of renewable energy increases, so do the employment opportunities. But what does this mean in figures, in more detailed figures, is presented by Floris Uhlemann from TNO Energy Transition. Welcome, Floris.
Yes, thank you, Jutta. So indeed, my name is Floris Uhlemann. I'm a researcher at TNO, and I work in the Department Energy Transition Studies in Amsterdam. And in this project, we've been working on the employment part, which includes a model that we developed during this project, which we use to estimate the turnover and employment numbers. In this model, we use a mathematical approach that in that way also provides consistency over time. So note that we use a modeling approach here, not a surveys-based approach. Every year we update the data that we use. I will go over a bit on what type of results will be out of here. But sometimes we also update the methodology depending on certain factors that might have changed in the way we model the employment here. But this year there were no further updates in the methodology. More information on the methodology you can find in the report, but just in short, we focus on factors like investments in new installations, operation and maintenance activities, production and trade of equipment, and also production and trade of biomass feedstock. Now, for this year, here you can see the employment numbers. So basically, this is a total number of jobs that we see here on the right. And in total, in 2022, there were approximately 1.69 million jobs in the EU over the different sectors combined. And we saw we saw a lot of growth this year. So 15% growth compared to the previous year. Furthermore, there were some trends in different countries that were quite general. So most of the countries saw an increase or maintenance of the jobs, and the most growth the highest number of jobs can be seen in the countries Germany, Italy, France, but also Spain and Poland. If you want to have a look more in the divisions per sector in where the growth can be seen, I advise you to look in the report. But the most jobs can be seen in the sectors of heat pumps, PV, and solid biomass. We also report numbers on turnover, and for 2022, we saw a total turnover of around 210 billion, which is an increase of about 13% of the previous year. Here we also see that most of the member states witnessed an increase in the turnover, and the top countries that are leading in in the total turnover are also Germany, Italy, France, Spain, and Sweden. Furthermore, in the variation of the sectors, we see that heat pumps, wind, and PV dominate also this industry turnover. A few highlights of the changes in specific cases. The largest growth in the employment numbers can be found in Portugal, where we saw almost 50,000 new jobs taking our modeling approach. And this is mostly due to a large hydropower plant that has been commissioned in this year. And then in the model, looking at the methodology, this would account for a big increase in these jobs. We also saw that the heat pumps became the largest sector in terms of employment and turnover. So they've, in previous years, I think PV or biomass have been on a similar level of total jobs, what heat pumps was in 2022 the highest one. And in terms of employment growth, the largest growth was seen in the PV sector. That was on the employment part of the project. I can hand the bar over to myself again for the next part or I don't know if Jutta, you want to say something in between still?
Yes, I would like to.
Yeah.
Because one of the important drivers in the deployment of renewables is the cost and competitiveness, for which renewables, you will see soon, show promising trends. And yes, please continue. We are happy to follow you.
Yes, thank you. So a short part about the cost, price, and cost competitiveness. In this project, we also worked on a few indicators, one of them being the investment costs, which you see on the graph on the left, and the other one, the levelized cost of energy on the right. This year, there was a bit of a discussion, as Frédéric already mentioned, in the past years, due to challenging macroeconomic circumstances. It was difficult to sort of generalize the trends happening. And therefore, for this year, for the cost and prices, we wanted to go along with also other references like IRENA and GRC, where we take the most up-to-date numbers from 2023 as our point of reference here. The data for these costs and prices are represented for the various countries and the different technologies. And in general, we can say that the investment costs and also the weighted average cost of capital, which I will show in the next slide, have also been updated for this year. In general, we can see that there are different kinds of ranges between the investment costs, as you see on the left, with the reference being the black bar. And the levelized cost of energy has shown some declines for most technologies, apart from offshore wind and hydropower. And also notable to mention, which we also dive deeper into in the report, is that in comparison and using these type of numbers, we also saw that, for example, the solar module costs have been increasing in the last 2 years due to higher material cost inflation, therefore making it difficult to see the consistent downward or higher trend. But in 2023, looking at these numbers, we see the trends picking up again from where it left off in 2020. Then shortly about the weighted average cost of capital. This is also an indicator that feeds into the way we approach the levelized cost of energy. It's basically a measure on what the risk is to invest in a certain technology. And we developed a methodology to calculate numbers on this WEC using a technical bottom-up approach. So not a survey approach where we ask individual sectors, but really a bottom-up approach using different data collection, expert judgment, because we see that that's most reliable in consistency over time. There are a few parameters that you can see in this table, and some of them have been derived from the Dutch subsidy calculations of the SDE, which is the subsidy for sustainable energy production and climate transition, which is intended for companies and organizations active in these sectors. And also this year, we basically updated the data, not the methodology. If you want to look more in the details of how we calculate this, I think I cannot go into that right now due to time limits, but we're happy to show you either in the summary or in the final report what kind of values there are. In general, we see that there's like a lower technology risk for technology types like wind onshore and solar PV, and a higher risk and therefore also a higher cost of equity and therefore a higher WEC for higher technologies. Some things that might change in this methodology is the debt to equity ratio, basically the ratio in which part of your investment comes from loans and debt, and which parts come from their own equity. For solar project, this has been lowered again due to the fact that developers have been forced to bring in more equity and leverage in the past years. This is how the table in the report looks like. I'm not gonna tell you every number of each country and technology combination, but in general, we see a trend that we see lower WEC values for technologies that are more mature, and also for countries that have more stable and political conditions. And we see the same happening on the other side, where higher WEC values occur for less mature technologies, unstable economic political conditions in the country, and higher risk in deployment rates. This was short on the renewable costs, pricing, cost competitiveness. Back to you, Jutta.
Yes, thank you so much. I probably will read this chapter again because this is amazing. But now we will talk about another part, another advantage of using renewable energy sources, because the use of renewable energy sources avoid fossil fuel use and avoids also greenhouse gas emissions. And for instance, the use of electricity from renewables contributed to 70% of the total fossil fuels avoided in 2022. This is really also an important indicator for comparing the progress in achieving the emission targets. And yes, we will follow you, Floris. Thank you.
Yeah, so as mentioned in the beginning, this work has been done by Vito, so many credits to them, and Ilse Morkens, who has done a lot of work on this. They asked us to present instead of them, so I'll be taking over. So avoided fossil fuels. The amount of avoided fossil fuels are annually analyzed by the European Environment Agency, but also by the Topic Center on Climate Mitigation. And the fossil fuel types that have been used here in the report can be seen on the top right graph. Types that are substituted are transport fuels, so diesel and gasoline, fuels for heating, so that are more the gaseous fuels, petroleum products and non-renewable waste, and fuels used for the production of electricity, which is a mix of gaseous, solid and oil products. Furthermore, these avoided fuel costs are based on country-specific fuel prices, which are derived from multiple sources like Eurostat, NASDAQ, but also from the European Commission themselves. And maybe an important note that the reference year here is 2005, as shown in the little note below on the graph. Since the progress achieved in the European-wide renewable energy deployment is largely attributed to the national targets. For 2022, we see that the avoided fossil fuels account up to 192 megatons. Where in total around 150 billion euros is avoided in expenses. Then also in the report are the avoided greenhouse gas emissions. These are based on data also available from like Eurostat, based on the primary energy consumption and CO2 emission factors per fuel type. And the term gross avoided greenhouse gas emissions illustrate the character that these estimates, the contributions do not necessarily represent the net savings per se, or also not based on life cycle assessments, since those would potentially lead to different results. And here, as shown in the graph, we see for 2022, that the avoided emissions are around 600 megatons of CO2 equivalent. The total greenhouse gas emissions for the European Union are about 3,500 megatons. And this leads to a reduction of around 15% as comparison to 2005, which is already quite a step in the right direction. But as Frederik also mentioned, we still have a long way to go. But hopefully this indicator also helps us think about this path in the right direction. Then back to you, Jutta.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, finally, let's talk about innovation and competitiveness indicators. Investments into research and development and innovation are commonly seen as the basis for technological changes, and therefore may be an important driver of economic growth. And last but not least, let's talk about this, or let us, Floris, talk about this. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, perhaps we can talk together about this, right? The questions as well later. Yeah, so one of the final parts of the barometer report concerns these investments, and these are split in public and private investments. First, here we see the public investments in the renewable energy technologies. For each of the technologies, we have a separate table like this one. This is a total table where we see the total public research and development expenditures, and also the share of the expenditures per GDP. A few highlights. It's not shown here in this table because this is a list of the European countries, but we also analyzed the biggest other countries in the world, and the US shows the highest public expenditure of around 750 million euros, followed by Japan and Germany. And in total, when comparing the total European investments, which is the total of the European countries in the European Union, but also the investments of the European Commission, they add up to over €1 billion in 2021. And this shows a share of the GDP of around 0.005 or 6%, which is also an increase of last year. We also looked at the private investments. This is in total a bigger sector, and shows Germany with the highest private expenditures of around 740 billion euros. Denmark has the second highest total investment, but the highest GDP share of around 0.3%. Furthermore, and you can look at this in the separate graphs, but about 50% of the total investments from the private sector come from wind energy, and about 30% to solar. And the total investments in the European Union has decreased with a small portion to in a total of just over 2 billion euros. And overall, this shows that the total private expenditure exceeds the public expenditure, with leading countries like Germany, Denmark, but also France, Spain, and Sweden. Then there's one final part about international trade in these technologies. We show these type of figures also in the report, where per sector the import and exports of these technology sectors have been visualized. For 2022, we see that in the European Union, we still have a strong position in wind power of about 66% of the total exports, and are also leading in biofuels and hydropower. Of course, we are not leading in PV because that's China. They even showed a very strong increase in the last year, where the total share of world global exports is almost 70% now coming from China. And China also has high shares in hydro and wind power, where for biofuels, the leading, the second and third countries of total exports are the US and Brazil. And in this visualization, we can see with the red arrows and the red circles, we see the total trade balances on the negative exports, and the positive for the green ones, where the leading are China, Brazil, India, and the US for negative exports. Negative trade balances, and positive for UK, Turkey, and Switzerland as the highest. That was most of my part, I guess. So I would like to hand back to you, Jutta.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and if this was too fast for you, I mean the participants of this webinar, then feel free to visit our website. Just a second, because Tiny, maybe you can, yeah, because all this material is downloadable. If you would like to read the entire report, please visit the EurObserv'ER's project website. And there you can find much more about also the methodology, some press releases, the presentations, and so on. And thanks to the speakers, I liked it. I hope also our participants, the audience. And well, now we come to an end. And the question is, are there questions? I saw in the chat there were some greetings, but no questions so far. Dear participants, thank you for the attention, and we would have time, well, about 4 or 5 minutes for very urgent burning questions. Otherwise, feel free to contact us directly via the website. So maybe the speakers can switch on their cameras. Don't be shy, dear participants. One question would be allowed, or maybe two. And but yes, I saw here. Thank you very much for your insights. I'll check the website. There is a message, and yeah.
We can also remind people that we will put the recording of the webinar on the website as well.
Yeah.
So that they can review.
Yeah, it was very detailed, and yeah, but if you would like to go deeper, go to the website, download the report. Sorry, Diane, I may have interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
Good morning. I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to, something to be clarified. We've seen that a decrease in the investments in wind power. Is there a reason for that? Maybe the investments were concentrated into photovoltaics or something else?
So maybe I can take this question directly. I think it's addressed to my part. So we can only speculate what the reason behind it is, and PV and wind is not two technologies that can be compared next to each other, since they are very different scale and application. And we see also from the trend in the PV sector that the investment shifted indeed from large scale a bit more to the middle and even small scale capacities, meaning that more private household or even a smaller business are investing in this PV sector, which is not easily feasible for wind sector. So for wind, it's normally a larger scale investment and larger project planned. It normally takes also longer to plan it. And with the supply chain and also increasing costs, it's also provide a lot of risk and danger for the investor. And I think, or we suspect that that is the main reason behind it. And another thing to mention is also that in 2022, there are a lot of offshore wind investment there. And so normally big investments are made for wind in 1 year, and they focus on realizing these projects. And normally in that case, meaning that the 1-2 years after that will be more or less focus on the realization of projects instead of investing in new ones.
Thank you very much, Lynn, for this answer. Yeah, well, and the job or the idea of this project is at first to collect the numbers and to provide the indicators. And yeah, but thank you for this explanation. At the end, yeah, we have to understand all these indicators and to do then the right advices. Okay, thank you so much. We would like to, it's now 12 o'clock. If there aren't any further questions, please contact us via the email, via the website, and we would like to thank you for your attention, and we would like to say goodbye. Thanks so much.